industry, size company, number of customers, whatever. And so now, since we're more than a CRM platform, honestly, our platform has the most growth with now over 1.3 trillion API calls in a month. We've reached past 1 million developers. It's just a really exciting community to be a part of. Now, I keep saying this thing about we're a platform, and really what I mean is with all of our applications, one of the biggest powers of Salesforce is the fact that you can do so much with point and click, and then Salesforce manages it all for you. That's things like your security, where an admin can go in and set up profiles for every user within your company, and then they're only able to access or interact with specific sets of data. And so you can have one unified platform to be able to have silos for all of these different companies, but keep them, or all these different departments, but keep them connected within your company. And so I'm not going to go into the breadth of the Salesforce platform because that really would take much more than an hour. But what I will focus on are the parts of the platform specific to mobile development. And if you were to get comfortable with mobile development on Salesforce, you could still be completely, all these tools go seamlessly into the desktop application as well. So it's really like when you're creating a desktop application on Salesforce, you're simultaneously creating the foundation for a mobile app at the same time. And then it's just a matter of creating those web pages to utilize that business logic that you've already configured within your web browser. So these are just a few things out of the complete platform, but these are the ones specific to mobile development. Today I'm going to be going over a little bit of the hybrid HTML5 functionality, talking about our mobile SDK and how that kind of jump starts you, gets you to hit the ground running with hybrid app development. We're going to be talking about a little bit of drag and drop development, building out your database, developer mobile packs. This is going to be a huge tool for anyone new to Salesforce mobile development because it's going to give you a fully baked example of a Salesforce mobile app integrating with Salesforce from an external platform. So you see what it's like to be able to grab data from Salesforce. It's like, sample code that you can then cannibalize and turn into whatever you want. And mobile SDK. So that I already mentioned, I guess. That's
How new is the mobile stuff?
So the mobile stuff is all extremely new. So we came out with the mobile packs within the last 6 months, and our mobile services webpage has also been since the beginning of the year. All of this is, totally newly released. Actually, the mobile SDK, the newest release of it, which is like, I'm going to show you how you spin up a new application using the SDK. It's like one node line in your terminal. Like it's just been re-released in the past 2 months, and it's so much easier to get started with hybrid and native app development. But it's been a huge push for us within the past year to be focusing on mobile development because it's just, the demand has grown so much, obviously in the consumer space, but also in the enterprise space. And we really want to make sure that our hundreds of thousands of customers have the ability to be able to create their own mobile apps if they want to. And obviously they need developers to do it, so I want everyone to be able to know that they can build mobile apps with Salesforce. But for those of you who are possibly interested in getting more breadth of different mobile functionality available, we have a bunch of webinars up on YouTube. We also are going to have Dreamforce in a month, which is our annual conference. We expect like 125,000 registrants. There are a ton of sessions on mobile development there. There will also be like, in the campground, we'll have free expo passes. You can talk to a lot of different companies about what they are doing in the mobile space. And so, I don't know, it's a really exciting time. This is like the biggest focus of our company right now. So what are we going to exactly be doing right now? So starting off, we're going to go into Salesforce, do a little bit of point-and-click app development, show you guys how to build your own data model within Salesforce. Then we're going to create a web service. So it's in Salesforce, we have a language similar to Java called Apex, and so that's our server-side language that we use in order to be able to grab all the data out of Salesforce. But if you're familiar with Java, the syntax of Apex is almost identical, and it should be very easy to catch on to. And then, after we create that web service to make our Salesforce data available in a unique way to our external application, we're going to install this mobile pack. And so I talk about mobile packs, I say it's super easy to use. I'm going to show you that it takes less than 5 minutes to really set it up. And if you wanted to say do this at home, again, it would only take you like 10 minutes to get a similar example set up that you could then use for your own testing and development. And then finally, I'm going to configure OAuth. And so for anyone who's ever done OAuth before, it's a very non-trivial dance to have to code because there's just so much going on. And especially with something like Salesforce where you need enterprise security. It's not just, hey, I'm trying to make a password for my blog here. I'm trying to actually secure this potentially thousands of records for my company. You don't want any sort of funny business going on from your mobile app, of course. And so we're going to configure OAuth and then deploy it into Xcode so we can see it on a mobile device. So let's start off with our cloud data model. So when it comes to database development, how are you generally building your databases? If you are using Microsoft Access, maybe you're using some point-and-click tool. It's very similar to Excel. And ultimately what you're doing is you're creating database tables with columns in those databases. Maybe you're using SQL and you're building it programmatically. But within Salesforce, we try and make it really simple in a similar fashion to wizards when you're setting up applications on your computer. And so we call database tables objects, and we call the columns within those database tables fields. So if I start saying objects and fields, that's what I'm referring to. A common example would be, okay, we store contacts within Salesforce. So contacts is an object, and then we have fields on those contacts, like their name, their address, their phone number, things like that. And Salesforce makes it really easy for you to be able to architect this data model out and be able to build it. So I'm going to just go into Salesforce right now and start building out this data model. Okay. So yeah, it's interesting on a projector because it's always like so humongous and I'm blind. Right now, I'm logged into Salesforce. This is the first thing that you see when you log into Salesforce and you're using it. Along the top, I have all of my different tabs, and these are taking me to my standard objects within my sales application. So if I wanted to interact with contacts, maybe change some account records, check on leads, things like that, that's how I would get to it. At the top, I see that I have all these different applications, and so if I were to say switch to the warehouse application, you can see all of the tabs along the top change to be data only relevant to my warehouse application. So it's really simple for an end user to be able to navigate around. I'm told that this interface was modeled after Amazon.com, so you didn't have to teach business users how to use it. It would just kind of be an intuitive interface. And it's really easy to be able to interact with all that data within the database. So,
when you open up a Salesforce account, is there a charge for that?
So there isn't. And if I go to, actually I have Developer open, developer.force.com, there's a Join Now button. And so that's how you would sign up for a Developer Edition org, which is way better than the trial org. Because the trial org expires in 30 days, and it doesn't have all of the functionality available to the Developer Edition org. Because the Developer Edition org is meant to be just for developers, build whatever you want in it, it never expires. We don't ask for your credit card information or anything like that, so it's just yours to play around with.
Okay.
And it'll be able to, that'll be the tool to be able to do everything that I'm showing you today without having to sign up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or sign up for a paid account.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can play around with Salesforce with this account.
Totally. And we have like a bunch of workbooks that are up here under technical library, and then where are workbooks? Here they are. So you can follow workbooks on any of the different topics that you might want to learn about. Like today, I mean, I'm going over mobile development, but there's stuff on integration, security, point-and-click development, Apex, visual forces similar to our HTML. I mean, it's a lot of content up here. So I'm going to start off. I've just gone into the setup now. So I'm where an administrator would be living if they're trying to customize Salesforce. And what I'm looking at here, there's a lot of stuff going on in the side, so I'll try and keep it brief. Setting up stuff for your company, this would be more of an administrator's job for managing different users, and profiles, and security. Build, this is primarily where all of the developers are living. And so you can create things like, I want to create an app, and that's what we saw in the little app picker in the upper right-hand corner here. Maybe you want to create objects, so those are our database tables. Tabs, pretty self-explanatory. Under development, that's where we can start creating things like Apex classes. So those are similar to Java classes, controllers for being able to manipulate different pages, custom pages that I might make within my org. And maybe you want to, lay it on a public site. Maybe you're trying to create some developer tool you want to share, things like that. But I'm going to start off with creating an application, a really simple one. So I'll do a hackathon app, because I like hackathons. And I'm going to create two things. I'm creating a hacker object. Actually, let me scroll down. So I'm creating a hacker object, and this is going to store hacker data within that object, and it's going to fall within my hackathon app. So this app is kind of like your quick getting started app builder, and it creates a few things for me. Like I mentioned, it created that object. It's going to create a permission set, so if this were private data, I could lay that onto a user in my org, and only certain users with that permission set would be able to see this application. And then it also adds a few other tabs, to quick start building this app. So I'm going to take you on the tour instead of the automated one. So it adds in, first of all, Chatter, which is our internal collaboration tool to be able to, it looks a lot like Facebook, to be able to communicate with other people in your org. No, I'm not going to click on it because then it'll force me to go through these videos. But you can chatter onto different records, collaborate with colleagues over different records that you have within the org. And I'm sorry, I keep using that word too. Org is just simply your own unique login to Salesforce. So this is my org. If you were to sign up for Salesforce, that would be your org. And so then I also have reports and dashboards. So if I wanted to start doing reporting on like how many hackers I have, how many signed up this month, pretty self-explanatory. But if I wanted to create a new hacker record right now, the only field that I can really edit if I wanted to create a new hacker is their name. And that's not really that useful. I want my application to do something a little bit more meaningful. So if I were to click on this little arrow here on the side, this is the quick access menu. And so this takes me from my application itself, from the end user's view, into the setup really quickly and be able to modify exactly what I'm on. So in this case, I want to modify the hacker object. So if I click View Object, it takes me straight into the hacker object setup detail page. Now, if I didn't do that from the little tab navigation, it's as simple as going to build, create objects, and then I'd navigate to the hacker object that way. But here I can see all of the API information about my hacker object. And so if I wanted to access this via the API, here's the API name, hacker__c. And then I have those standard fields that automatically come every time I create a record. I don't have to do anything for these to populate, for these to exist. Just tells you what's the name of your hacker, who was the last person to modify it, when was it created, things like that. But I can also create custom fields. And so these are going to be those columns in my database that are custom things I want to be able to track other than just their name and when we added them into the database. So now if I click New, I can see a huge list of different kinds of fields that I can create. And so these aren't things like standard data types. These are things like email. So if I tried to input something that wasn't in a blank@blank.com format, Salesforce would reject it and say, please give us a real email. Same with phone number, or same with, the really interesting one, I think, to mobile development is geolocation. And I'm going to create that one first. So what this does is it allows you to define a location on a record. And why this is really interesting in mobile development is then when you're, say, trying to map a list of records on, like, say, on an HTML page, because you have this field stored directly onto the object, you're then able to just query for that using Salesforce. Also has its own query language called SOQL, Salesforce Object Query Language, very similar to SQL. You would be able to then query for those records based off of that location and then map it in basically one line of SOQL and then whatever 5 lines it takes to do that with the Google Maps API. And so instead of having to do a bunch of like crazy distance calculations and a lot of different radius, I don't even really know how you would do that to search for records within 5 miles of here without this geolocation field, but it makes life a lot easier. So I'm going to select geolocation and name the field, so location, and I'll make it decimal instead of degrees. as I mentioned before, this is a wizard. It takes me through all of the different steps that you would need to configure this field. So it first took me to what kind of field do you want, what do you want to call it. Now it's asking me what kind of security do I want, so I could granularly select all these different profiles of people that exist within my organization, from partner users, marketing users, to administrators, and say who should be able to see this field. I'm just going to leave it at default, everyone can see it. And then another great thing is the fact that you can just directly add it to the page layout. So what this means is I'm creating the field and I'm automatically adding it onto the record, so that now if I were to click new hacker, that location field would show up in the form. I don't have to add it there, I don't have to change any code, it just automatically added to the page layout. And then if I wanted to take it off, it's as easy as drag and drop. Just go to the page layout, drag that field off, and then it's not there anymore. So I'm going to click save. And actually, you know what, I want to create a couple more fields, but I'll take you through it really quickly. So as I mentioned before, email field, that's really great. It automatically checks the emails for you to make sure that this is actually an email. And one last field that I want to track, I'll pick text field, and maybe I care about their Twitter handle. Want it to be on the page, and save. Now, that's just one database table. If I wanted to say create other database tables, I mean, it's a relational database as well. And so to be able to relate two databases together, it's just through a single relationship field type. But I'm going to do that in Schema Builder, which is just, it's basically a more graphical way of viewing what we were just doing, because it's a little bit easier to visualize those two databases if you can actually see them. So if I choose this hacker object and put this onto the layout, zoom in. I can't even see, there should be a zoom in button, but it's like hidden because my resolution is so terrible. Okay, there. So here's a hacker table we just created with the couple fields that we also just created. On the left, I have a list of all the other objects that exist within my organization, so if I wanted to add them to the layout, I could, but I don't want to. I want to create a new object, and I want to relate that object to my hacker object. So that's as easy as taking, hey, here's my new object, I'm dragging it on here. I want to call it Hackathon, because hackers are hackathons. And click save. So now, God, I wish I could zoom out of this. This really sucks. That, oh, there it is. So now I have these two objects. They're not related at all right now. But since a hacker can go to hackathons, and there can be many hackers at a hackathon, it would make sense to relate those two database tables. So I'm going to scroll down to the proper type of field, which would be a lookup field, so that if I wanted to look up a hackathon to add a hacker to, I could. So let's call the field label hackathon. And then it is related to hackathon. Super simple. It asks me, what do I want the child relationship name to be called? Hacker, since it's a hacker object, it fills that out for me. And I'll click save. And so now, I mean, this is why I say it's a more graphical representation of what we've already been seeing. This really allows you to see your entire relational database in an ERD diagram automatically. And so we can see right now I have my hacker related to hackathon, and it tells me it's a lookup relationship between the two. So really simple to get this set up. It actually makes it really easy for visual learners to be able to understand what's going on within their database. And it also makes it really easy to make documentation, because you can just take screenshots of it. So now we have that. Let's go back into Salesforce and see how we actually change things. So if we wanted to, and it's funny, I'm just going to close out of this really quick. Oh, I guess I need to create one. So I'll just create me first, because I am narcissistic like that. So I'll do sam@test.com, and then Twitter's Samantha Ready. And just for the demo, I'm going to add in this location service. This is the address of salesforce.com in geolocation form. So the latitude is here, and then oops, the longitude is there. Oops. Okay. And now, one thing you might have noticed is that the hackathon object isn't on here. And unfortunately, because when you create things with Schema Builder, it doesn't give you the ability to choose to directly add it to the page layout, I'm just going to do that really quickly. And sorry, I'm doing it too quickly. If I scroll to the top and I see this little button that says, or link that says Edit Layout, I can then add this hackathon field right here directly onto the layout. So I'm just going to drag and drop, add that in there, and click Save. So now the hackathon record maker, or I'm sorry, selector is there, but I haven't created any hackathons yet, so I'm not going to relate the two. And I won't bore you by creating more records and typing because I'm very typo prone. But that's how you would add other fields in the page layout. That's how you create a lookup and relate to databases. So for now, I've created my small data model for this very simple example and how to create a database table with various columns within it, how to relate it. But it's really awesome that we can do that all within Salesforce, but what about if we wanted it to be accessible outside of Salesforce? And so that's where RESTful logic comes in. And so who in here knows what REST is? Yeah, everyone? Okay, cool. So then I don't really need to explain it that much. Universal language of computers, just making sure I don't want to assume anything. But Salesforce has the ability to access all of their data model, or object schema, via REST. And that's something that I think is a really huge value add when I'm creating different objects within my database, because I don't have to build any sort of logic in order to be able to access it externally. And so right now, I could go into Apogee Console, and I will, to be able to query for, or any sort of basic CRUD operation, create, read, update, delete, on my hacker object, and it's already accessible via REST. And so that's really great for, especially if you have a really complicated data model and you're doing a lot of integration, that you don't have to worry about that working or that being an issue. Also, if you then feel that that isn't enough, and you're like, hey, I want a little bit more than the ability to create or read, you can use Apex REST, so Apex, very similar to Java, in order to make a little bit more custom logic to be able to manipulate that data. And so I'm going to go into Apogee Console and show you what that looks like. So just make sure this is reset. Cool. So Apogee Console is like an API playground for integration developers. It has basically every major API right now available to play with. I'm selecting Salesforce right now. But you have the ability to do a bunch of different basic operations, but using our special REST calls, you'll be able to do a little bit more than just the basic get.
Is Apogee part of Salesforce?
So Apogee is not. Yeah. Public, this is free to use. You don't even need to sign up to be able to use it. It's great. But right now, if I were to just change this to the hacker object that we just created, there's that API name there. Click send. Oh, actually I have to OAuth in before it'll let me. By selecting this authentication here, and I chose OAuth, it authenticates me into this org over here that I'm already logged into, because it's able to read the cookies and recognize my login. That's why it didn't ask me for my username or password. But if I were to do this again and change this to hacker_C, click send. So it tells me all of the object describe information on this object, and it also sends back. I wish it wasn't so crammed in here, but it sends back that one record that we just created, which is the SAM record. Now, that's really great, but let's create a class that does a little bit more than just the basic get. And so if I go into the Developer Administrative setup again, I can go under Develop and then create an Apex class. And so I have a couple classes in here already, but really just, I mean, this is a simple editor. You can use basically any IDE that you want. If you're a Sublime Text, if you're a Eclipse. I mean, I personally like to work out of here just because I hate installing things and I get a new computer all the time since IT hates me for some reason. But I'm going to copy and paste this in only because it's kind of a long class and I don't really want to have to type for days in front of you. But I'm going to walk through it. So starting off at the top, what we're doing here is we're taking this global class and we're exposing it as a REST resource that you'll be able to access from any external server. So the first line here is at REST resource. When you have your standard REST call with /hackers on at the end, it knows to access this public resource, and then depending on if you're doing a get, put, post, delete, whatever, it's going to know to go into the appropriate method. And so these are pretty simple methods too, but I think they really relay the point. For example, this first one is a get. It's going to do a get based off of the name parameter that you have in the URL. And it's going to do what I mentioned before, which is a query on records based off of a distance to a certain location. And so, like with hackers right there, it's going to look for any location value with geo-coordinates that are within 5 miles of this location here, which happens to be our Heroku office in Salesforce, or in San Francisco. And so, if you have any hacker record that's within 5 miles of that location and the name is similar to that parameter, then it's going to return that list. And so you can think of, if you're building your own, let's say, PHP web app on SAP or on Heroku or whatever, this is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting to get the right data out of Salesforce for you into your other application to do whatever you want with it. Now, the rest of these are also really simple. I think the thing that I want to highlight the most is just that you can do these queries in line and you can do DML operations in line. So insert, delete, what have you. Apex makes it really simple to be able to work with your Salesforce object model because it inherently understands what an object is and what a field is. And you don't have to do any sort of like JavaScript manipulation to get the right format of JSON to be able to go into the server. So I'm going to save this guy, quick save, and I'm going to create one more hacker record just so that we can see if we have 2 records in there, it's really not going to return just everything that I have. So I'm going to call this guy Joe, no location, Joe.com, whoops. See what I'm talking about? Typos, I can't even spell test. So now, if I wanted to do the exact same sort of apogee test, but I want to use my hacker object, or this hacker's, Apex class, I'm again going to paste because I am a terrible, terrible typer. I'm going to take you through what you have to go through in order to build this. So this is a standard REST call to be able to use anything that we have going on in Apex REST. Starting off at the front of it, it says instance.salesforce.com. Well, your instance of Salesforce is whatever pod you happen to be on, and that's something that a lot of developers don't realize they need to be aware of. We have so many pods storing your data all over the world so that you don't lose your data if one data center for some reason goes down. So it's really important to know what instance you're on. So we're on NA15 right now. I'm going to paste that in. So we're on NA1 or NA15.salesforce.com, services Apex REST. I don't actually have a namespace, but you can put a namespace in your organization so that your code is specific only to your org, can't be sent anywhere else, and it's also unique for you to be able to externally query as well. And then my method, which is hackers. So that's my URL referencing, URL REST resource mapping that I have here at the top. So I now want to look for anyone whose name is close to Sam within my organization. And so it returns only that one hacker now. It doesn't return Joe because Joe isn't within 5 miles of Heroku. And so really, really simple 5 lines of code, really powerful though. Now, the next piece to the puzzle, since we now have our custom logic, we have our custom Apex class, I'm only saying RESTful logic, but I just want to touch upon that one thing that I'm really not covering today is the ability to make business logic. And so these are things like workflow. These are things like validation rules so that you can ensure, hey, if I were trying to insert a hacker but they were already there, don't insert this hacker because that's a duplicate record. All of these different aspects are things that are leveraged in application development for Salesforce, and anything that you implement, like, for example, a workflow that'll kick off to send an email and create a task every time a hacker's created, that'll still get implemented from a mobile app. And so I didn't think that I would have time to go over building that today, but I thought it was a concept that would be pretty easy to understand. It's all one experience for application development. So even though you would be building a workflow in the desktop environment, it would be fired off in both desktop and mobile. But the next part is taking this data and actually making it mobile. And so the next piece of the puzzle is to install and modify this mobile pack. And so really what the mobile packs are a forklift for being able to help get you started really quickly with any sort of mobile app. And we have a huge library of a bunch of different resources for like Sencha, Backbone, Knockout, jQuery, Twitter, Bootstrap, just a bunch of different libraries for you to be able to see examples of your favorite framework. And this is something that's going to be constantly growing. And it brings up a contact management application, and there are a bunch of different examples, but the one that I'm going to be talking about is contact management. And it is a fully working application using said MVC framework, and it's pulling from Salesforce. You'll be able to see exactly how those JavaScript libraries work in order to be able to grab that data and then modify it, extend it, whatever you want to do. But when we were coming up with these mobile packs, we realized there are quite a few nuances there. And we wanted to make sure that they were all out in the open, blogged about, documented, so that people know how to do exactly that, and not just like, copy and paste and then not really understand what's going on. So, I'm going to walk through the example that deploys to Heroku. And so it's not native on Salesforce, though you could be making mobile apps native on Salesforce, but it'll show you if you had an application in any language, whatever, on any server, how that would then pull into Salesforce, and you'd be able to make a mobile app out of Salesforce data. So, before I go into that, actually, I should probably do the next slide too, because I'll have to be able to do both at the same time. When you're deploying a mobile app in an external server, you also have to configure security. And that's because your other application is going to need access into your Salesforce data. Your Salesforce data is private. I mean, it's not like a public thing. It's generally business data that's storing information about your company. And you need to be able to configure OAuth so that your Salesforce instance knows what exactly it's giving permission to when it's showing this data. In this case, I'm just showing hacker information, so I really don't care who sees it. But if it were, say, account data, you'd want to know exactly what mobile app was accessing this, so you'd know what accounts can I show them and what can I show them, what can they interact with and what shouldn't they be able to. And so we try to make it really easy to be able to connect into Salesforce with external applications. So I am first going to go into the browser and pick the appropriate mobile pack. So bit.ly/mobile packs is the easy way to get there. And I mean, here's the list of all the different mobile packs that we have currently. I'm just going to go straight into the backbone example. And it gives you a little breakdown of what exactly the mobile pack is or what they pertain to. You can look for examples on HTML5, pure native iOS or Android or hybrid. And you can toggle between the different frameworks. Are you trying to actually deploy it within Salesforce or are you deploying it on an external server? But it really, I mean, here's some screenshots of the application. It tells you all the prerequisites that you need in order to be able to set it up. And it also gives you every single step that you need to do in order to be able to set it up. So really this whole process takes maybe 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how long it takes for you to get the email and to sign up. But it's a really easy to follow example, and it takes you across the finish line to have that fully working application working in your Salesforce development, Salesforce Developer Edition org, the free org that I was mentioning that you can sign up for. So I'm going to choose deploy to Heroku since I'm going to be talking about an external application, and I'm going to need to copy a couple things just to paste them into my terminal. So the first thing that I have to do is I'm going to clone this code off of Git. It's all stored up on Git. You can go to this link right now and peruse the code. It's public and free for everyone. And I'm going to clone it into my local repository so that I can then modify it and do what I want with it. So I have my terminal window open here. And where am I? Okay, so I'm in demos. I'm going to CD into SVCC, the Silicon Valley Code Camp, and I think this is an empty folder. So I'm going to then clone, oh, it's already doing it. I'm going to clone everything off of Git into my folder right here.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can you clarify what you mean by clone as opposed to, are you just bypassing you and just going straight to something? Is that the idea?
Yeah, so GitHub, are you familiar with GitHub?
I've worked with it. Yes, I'm familiar with it, but I'm not an expert.
Okay. So if I go to the exact link that I'm cloning, what this does is it takes me to a file structure on Git that allows me to, when I say clone, it takes all of these files and it clones it into whatever folder I'm in my terminal. So in this case, I started out in a demo folder that's living on my desktop, and I'm cloning these files, which is the mobile pack for Backbone and Salesforce, cloning all of these different sample files into my computer so that I can then modify any of the code, and then I can push it to a server.
Okay, I sort of get that, but why the distinction with the word clone? Why are they going to the point of clone as opposed to just download?
I think that's just how GitHub's terminology is.
It's just a terminology.
Yeah. So it's just called cloning when you're literally just taking the code and you're not doing anything, you're just copying it into your computer. Yep. Good question. So back into the terminal, it's all done. So I apologize that I'm bouncing around, it just makes it easier to go in between stuff. So if I were to go into my desktop now, and where is such a cluttered desktop? If I go into Silicon Valley Code Camp, I now have my mobile Backbone.js folder locally. So I'm going to open all of these actually in Sublime Text so that I can modify them later. Just copying that all in there. So what this is all of that same code, but now I have it open within my my own code editor, and I'll be doing the Backbone Web jQuery Mobile. But now that I have this app locally, which this is kind of an interesting example to explain because think of this as this is the project that you've been working on and now you want to deploy on a mobile app. So I have this here, but I want to actually put it onto the web. So what I need to do is, where is my web browser? So many things. I'm going to create a new app in Heroku and then push it to that. So what I need to do is back in the terminal. Heroku is Salesforce's kind of partner platform for being able to deploy an app of any language. And so if you yourself are a PHP developer, a Java developer, Node developer, any other language that you want to code in if you're not necessarily prone to Apex and Visualforce, Heroku's our partner, well, they're not a partner, they're part of our company, but our solution for being able to deploy an app in any language. So I'm going to create a new Heroku application for me to push this code up to so it's live on the web. So if I do Heroku create, what that did just now is it created this application here, and I'll just open that in this window. So it just created this new app, and really there's nothing on this application right now because it just created it. But this is what I'm going to want to push my application to in a minute. So heading back into the terminal, I'm going to CD or change directories into mobile packs. I want to go into samples, and I'm just navigating to the part of the directory that actually has the code that I want to push. So right now, I could either do a hybrid example, I could do a backbone with visual for a sample, or I could do a backbone with web sample. And I'm going to choose backbone with web because I'm trying to show this application living on the web. Okay, backbone web jQuery mobile. Oops. All right. So go into Node.js. Sorry, this navigating is ridiculous. So now I'm inside of my backbone web jQuery mobile Node application. This is what I'm going to want to push up to the web. So I'm going to do, or I'm going to initialize this Git repository. And so what this is going to do is allow me to use Git in order to push this code up to Heroku. So I just did a git init. Git add -a recognizes all the different files that I'm trying to push. Git commit. Whoops. Sorry about that. Forgot to put git commit -m. All right, so it's telling me all the different files that I'm going to be committing once I do the push. But I need to create that security into Salesforce first, because even if I push this application to Heroku right now, what it's going to be trying to pull from my Salesforce org, it'll have zero permission to do because I haven't set up OAuth for security yet. So going back into Salesforce, if I go into the setup, I'm going to need to create what's known as a connected app, because in order for my application to be able to connect into Salesforce, it needs to be a connected app. So I'm going to call this my hacker app, because it's going to be showing my hacker data. Give it my email so that it can send me any error messages if I have any, and then I want to enable OAuth for this application. And so there are a couple things that I need to configure for OAuth. First, I need to give it a callback URL. And the way that I'm going to do that is I copied my Heroku application URL earlier. That's how I will get into my Heroku app. So that's going to be my callback URL. This is going to be the starting point for my application. And this needs to be HTTPS for Salesforce to accept it. Then, now that I've decided that, it asks for OAuth scopes. And so that's what level of access you have into the Salesforce data. This is a really standard, industry standard security model, and it's foolproof for Salesforce, at least, for you to know, hey, this is going to work, this is the level of access we're going to have, no code required. So I'm going to just give it full access, but you could modify it down to only manage data or only perform requests on your behalf anytime, only this, that, and the other. You really do want to make this as granular as possible if you have private data, but in my case, I don't really have anything private, so I'm just going to give full access. So after I click Save on this connected app, I have everything that I need to be able to connect into Salesforce. It gives you your consumer key if you're doing that sort of a signed request to be able to check for. It also gives you your consumer secret, which you can use if you need that. Those are generally the two main handlers that you need when you're creating some sort of OAuth connection. And just to show you, if I were, to say, do you want to do this? You can go home and do this yourself. It walks you through where exactly after you've cloned it, all the different folders that you would need to navigate into in order to do exactly what I'm doing right here. So if it seems like a lot, like right now, but you're really interested in doing this yourself, this is all in the step-by-step guide in order to create this app yourself. It took me a really long time to actually get this down to this like bare bones walkthrough, because it's a lot of automation in the back end to be able to make it this simple. But, so we have right here, we want to go to our callback URL, we set that up, we set up our OAuth scopes, and now we just need to configure the environment variables within this application. And so what I mean by environment variables are those consumer keys, consumer secrets like we just saw. You need to add your Heroku application URL in order to be able to set up the starting point. And then you also need to set up your client ID, which is that consumer key, so it knows, hey, this is the application in my connected app, this is the application living on Heroku. They have the same consumer key, so that must mean this is authenticated to do what was configured just now. And actually, now that I am seeing the tutorial, I'm really glad that I scrolled down on that, because I forgot to add index.html at the end of the callback URL. So it takes me to my Heroku app, sure, but I want it to go to index.html, not just the base Heroku app, because that's where the actual web page lives. So glad I caught that. All right, so back in the terminal window, we have our Heroku app created. We're inside of the folder with all of our resources for our app. What we want to do is we're going to do a Heroku config add. So we need to do the app URL, which is this. Oh. So we have our app URL, and oops.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Oh yeah,
Is the application auto scalable on Heroku?
I'm sorry,
Auto scalable.
what do you mean?
Auto scalable means it's elastic, which means as demand increases.
Oh,
You don't need your like monolithic application. It's all auto scalable on Heroku.
yeah, so the way Heroku's...
Yes, how it works.
So as your application has more demand and it needs to scale for like a bigger user base, Heroku uses what's known as dynos. And so it's basically like you have a certain set of dynos, and the more that you need, similar to like if you were adding in more racks to Rackspace or something like that, it scales out with just giving you more dynos.
So you don't need to take care of it.
You don't need to
take
take exactly. Yeah, they handle all that for you. It's just a scale or a sliding scale model. That's why, because even I need to follow this apparently. It needs to be all lowercase for the app URL. It didn't understand what environment variable I was talking about. So Heroku add config app URL. Okay. This is insane.
Should be config and
Oh, I'm so dyslexic. Heroku config add. And I wish that this didn't say HTTP. Okay. Oh, did I do that again? How did that? See, I'm really sorry. This is why I copy and paste everything, because I'm literally the worst. Oh, did I do? This is so embarrassing. I did it again. Heroku config add app URL. I'm really sorry for the technical difficulty, guys. Why did it not? Get remote. sure why. I think I created the Heroku app before I was in this folder, so it didn't recognize the Heroku app I was talking about. That was the problem here. So sorry, I'm making things more confusing. But what I did was I created a Heroku app in a different folder. So I created the Heroku app before I navigated to this one. And I'm going to paste this in. All it changes, the callback URL is now at my new Heroku app, which I just created again. And so if I were to do this again, I have to get it. And then
S over there?
you're right. See, thank you. This is really bad. Okay, so now I have the app URL, and then the last thing that I need is the app or client ID. And I get that, which is just the consumer key for the OAuth handshake. I get that from pasting it straight from here. And so heading back into the terminal, now I want to do Heroku config add client ID and paste that guy in. And so now what you can see, Heroku config, it's kind of hard to see, but right here I have my app URL, which is now set to my Heroku app, and then I have my client ID, which is right there. And I'll just switch this over. You can see same Heroku app, welcome to your new app. But now if I do a git push Heroku master, what this is now going to do is it's going to take all of the different files that I'm looking at right now, which is my Node.js app, I'm in that folder within my computer. It's going to take all those files and now push it to Heroku master, which is the weird haiku name, Evening Scrubland. It's going to push it to this URL so that it'll have my new contact management app, just like it shows on the website. So if I wanted to refresh this now, it should show me my changes live, which apparently this is a slow internet connection. All right, so I expect this to happen. One other thing about setting up a application on Heroku and a connected app at the same time is if you make any changes to the connected app, it may take 5 or so minutes in order for that to show up. So I'm going to go ahead and start modifying the application, and then I'll do a refresh in this after I've done that. So you can see this is going to show a contact management application right now. I'm going to modify that application to be with our hacker model, and then I'll push it to Heroku after we see that this works, and then you'll see it also change into what we're changing it to. And so just to make sure the client ID is fine, 86PS, Evening Scrubland, all that, yeah. Cool. So that should all be fine. Wait, do I have two? Hold on 1 second. That actually looked wrong. Do I have two? No, there's only one /here. Okay, I'm fine with this. This will work. But give it like 2 or 3 more minutes to propagate. Let's modify the code while we're here. This is my hacker class. Don't want that. There it is. All right. So I'm going to go into the Node app and talk about what we're seeing right now or what we will be seeing when the app actually opens. So here I have my EJS file. This is my index.html page pumping out all the information that I'm getting from my Node server. How is it getting this information from Salesforce? Well, first off, we are taking in those environment variables. So this is the thing that we just set. With our client ID, that's where we got our consumer key to be able to do the OAuth handshake, redirect URL, it knows to take that app URL to Heroku and go to index.html, and the proxy URL. So it's able to take all that information and then proxy from Salesforce, also from the same domain. So at the top here, I'm including a bunch of different libraries, like, for example, it's going to look like jQuery Mobile, nothing new there. I have my backbone library, underscore necessary for backbone. And then I also have these two libraries, ForceTK and ForceEntityJS. And so these are libraries that you'll be able to use. It's like an application wrapper for our JavaScript libraries to be able to easily query for Salesforce data. And so right now, if I scroll down to the bottom where the magic is happening, I am able to see here, backbone framework, separated into models, views, and collections. And so what this is doing is this is grabbing all contact records and these various fields. And so it's then storing it to my contact model that I'll be able to pump into my mobile app all throughout the page. Now, it's using this force.sObjectExtend. That's using the ForceTK in order to be able to recognize, hey, what is a contact? What is this sObject? What is a field list? Okay, that's a list of fields and contacts. So pretty simple to be able to get that data from the database. Now I have it within my client. But then I have my collections here. And so that's actually doing the query to get my list of contacts. And so we'll be modifying this in order to grab a list of hackers instead. And so it's modifying the various different templates. And so it would be a lot better if I could actually go through the templates and kind of go back and forth. But what really this application is showing is a list of contacts that when you click on a contact, it shows you the contact detail information about that individual contact. And so I'm able to toggle between these various views by using Backbone to just make it really simple for me to get that data that I've grabbed through JavaScript into a framework that can be used on the page. And so this is a canonical example that we've replicated with Knockout, Angular, jQuery Mobile, any sort of framework or just UI framework that you might want to use. We have the example fully baked out with all the examples right there. But I'm going to change this, and sorry, just to show you, these are like the different template pages. I'll come back in between this and what I have in the browser to show you how one translates into the other. But I'm going to change all of this so that it's not on contact anymore. I want it to just be on my hacker object. And in this case, I'm going to do the super friendly way of find and replace. So oops. Right now I have contacts, and I want to change anywhere that it's a contact to be hacker. And then replace all. And then I also, anywhere that it's in a lowercase contact, I want it to be okay. So now that I have that completely changed, I also want to change it to be, I think the fields that I had were name, Twitter, and email. And so the same thing, name, Twitter. So now what it should be doing is it should be searching for all hackers and put that onto the page. Just checking, where are my templates up here? I also am going to have to change it within my page to be displaying the proper data. So while I've changed the model to be querying for the right data, I also need to be able to change the page to display the right data. And so the way that I would do that is, first off, where I'm building the page itself, which is in the JavaScript. Hold on. So, first name, first name, all here. Oh. Okay, so we want this to be name. And so this will be displaying the name of my hacker. Then I'm going to move last name. Then I want for email, and then email undefined. To display my email. And then the last thing, oh, oops. I shouldn't have deleted that. I'm also wanting to display their Twitter. So, Twitter. You know, I always feel like live coding is like better because then you can tell that it's real and things are actually happening, but at the same time I feel kind of bad making you guys watch me type this out. So, all right, so I think I have everything done. And so, set up the name, Twitter, email, that's great. Within the template itself, I have all of this information set up. And I think I'm ready to push it to Heroku. I'm going to try resetting that page to see the contact management app show up now. Oops. So if I go back into Heroku open, why is it still? What did I do? This is how you know it's a real demo, because real demos never work. I swear this is set up properly. So I have this ends in M4. Let's see, M4 is the last one, and then this scrubland, heroku.com, blah blah blah. Yep. And where my client ID, redirect, HTTPS, evening scrubland. I don't know why this has two. There we go. Okay. For some reason it was injecting a second slash into my callback URL, but I think that was my fault for setting up an environment variable with a trailing slash. And so it was expecting it without a slash, I had a slash. It wasn't the same callback URL. But now it's asking me, hey, HackRack, that's what we just set up in the connected app, is requesting permission to, and those are all of the OAuth settings that are included when I say I'm giving it full access. So this is really similar when you download a Facebook app, like maybe you play Farmville, and then it says when you download that app, or not download it, but when you sign up for it, hey, it wants access to your friends and your pictures and all that other stuff. That's OAuth into your Facebook account. So you're using your Facebook account to authorize that access to your Facebook information because you're on the Facebook platform. But it's just some external application, Zynga, in this case, is this external application on Heroku that's trying to get your information to pump into this application. And so here I'm going to allow it, and then I'm going to now see this contact management application. And so this is, in Backbone, and unfortunately it looks really ugly if it's not a phone. But if you were to open it on a phone, that's what it would look like. And I can modify this however I want. Maybe it's like, and then when I click save, it's going to save that, and I now see this new information. It's completely running on Salesforce, working in Salesforce. This is live data that I am seeing on a public website, and if you wanted to go to this ridiculous evening scrubland 7603, this is live right now on the internet. Now, if I want to then push this information, and let me just see this one more time. Heroku config. Yeah, that trailing. So, sorry, I'm gonna make you guys watch me do this one more time, and change this so it doesn't have the trailing slash. Heroku config add path URL equals.
Have you ever thought about doing a video cast, pre-plan, pause and start?
I have thought about it, but I mean, I've done webinars and stuff like that with as video content, but
Well, like you said, you prefer the real thing.
I prefer the real thing because then it doesn't seem like I just came up here and did a little dance and then showed you a video. Like I really do like doing this for real, but I feel like the second that you get in front of people and you try to do it live, it comes up with interesting nuances that don't usually come up. But all right, so I have the app URL set up properly, and now I'm going to do a git, add all the changes that I had, git commit. So I added hacker stuff. This is just making a note when I push it to git. If I were to look back at this code, that's the change that I made. And now I'll do a git push Heroku master. And it's going to take everything that I just did and then push it up to Heroku. Oh wow, is that the time? Okay, so apparently that's what time it is. As soon as this is done, I don't think that I can go into making this hybrid, which makes me really sad. But we'll have it living on the web, and I will conclude really quickly. So, you know what? I'm just going to go to the terminal. Heroku open. So ask me again, allow, cool. So now I have that exact same application, but it's showing me my hacker information that we created earlier, showing the information stored within Salesforce in my organization. And so, I mean, obviously I did a lot of copy and pasting, but it shows you in the 5 minutes once I actually got the application URL in there, how much you can really do with the example we have here, and it can be tailored to any object model. So here I was just doing it for my simple hacker application, but you could do this for any data you have stored within Salesforce, and then get it pumped onto a mobile app really easily. And then whatever framework that you want to use, you can start using a little bit more fancy than jQuery Mobile to really bring that data to life. And then as I said, if you're modifying this stuff, if you create a new hacker, if you're modifying a hacker, this would still fire off all of that point and click application business logic you already had configured within Salesforce. And so, yeah. Now, if you wanted to then deploy this and make it a hybrid application, our new mobile SDK allows you to create a hybrid app in Xcode using one line of Node, which is just force iOS create. And I won't walk through everything because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But so force iOS, I'm just going to type that. So what it says right here when you're creating it, I would specify the application type. So what am I trying to do? Am I trying to create a native app? Am I trying to create a hybrid app? In this case, if I were trying to use what we just saw, it would be a hybrid remote because that's something that's remotely living on Heroku.